Most people live on autopilot, reacting, conforming, and repeating the same patterns without ever realizing it. But what if you could see the code behind human behavior? What if you could anticipate decisions before they're made, avoid manipulation before it happens, and influence outcomes with precision? In this video, we're diving into the psychological blind spots, cognitive traps, and hidden forces that shape human behavior and how to outthink them. This is about consciously maneuvering through human thinking and decision making, yours included. Let's begin. This video is going to be a little bit different. It has more to do with not just understanding what people are doing and why they're doing it, but also how to plan around it. In my other videos, I kind of talk more about understanding why people are doing what they're doing. But in this one, I want to do that and talk about ways to just plan things and to stop being so surprised by what people do. Firstly, I just want to get something out the way that outthinking human behavior doesn't necessarily mean you're out to manipulate people. There's a lot of very positive benefits that outthinking others can bring to you. And I'm going to say those benefits pretty soon. It essentially is the idea of just transcending the unconsciousness of other people. There are people that live lives very unconsciously. They don't know what they're doing and why they're doing it, and their actions could never negatively affect you if you don't predict those actions ahead of time and make plans around those given actions. I don't care how, adult and put together someone seems, there are aspects to them, both natural and programmed, that causes them to maybe derail the things you're aiming to achieve, or to just derail your motivations as a whole. It's kind of like the perfect analogy for this is kind of like the Agent Smiths in the Matrix trilogy. They're just acting off of programming. So that's the idea here, operating beyond the programming. Now, I'm going to talk about a lot of things in this video, cognitive biases, ego defense mechanisms, but also shadow traits. We're going to talk a bit about some things from Robert Greene's book, The Laws of Human Nature, and just a lot of cool stuff in this video. So definitely watch until the end and take notes if you have to, because we're going to be delving deep into things. So first, let's define human behavior so that we know the phenomenon that we're outthinking to begin with. And then I'll also talk about why you need to understand and outthink human behavior in the first place, as in the benefits and why it's important. So first, let's explore the definition here. Human behavior is the potential and express capacity, mentally, physically, and socially, of human individuals or groups to respond to internal and external stimuli throughout their life. Behavior is driven by genetic and environmental factors that affect an individual. Behavior is also driven in part by thoughts and feelings, which provide insight into individual's psyche, revealing such things as attitudes and values. Human behavior is shaped by psychological traits, as personality types vary from person to person, producing different actions and behavior. Essentially, to say that there's a lot of factors at play here when it comes to why people act how they act, right? Obviously, you have the genetics, you have programmed beliefs, you have their feelings, their thoughts, you have external things that humans tend to observe, and then they copy that. So there's a lot of things here. Now, when we talk about outthinking human nature, here are the powerful benefits of having this skill. First, you avoid self-deception and the self-deception of others onto yourself. So what I mean by that is you spot the ways in which you deceive yourself, you lie to yourself, right, without knowing it. You spot that. And then, because you're human too, you're not exempt for this. And then you spot the ways in which others deceive themselves, leading them to deceiving you. The reason why some people are able to be so corrupt or be so awful in the world and to hurt others and to just spread chaos and destruction is because they're able to tell themselves that acting like this is okay. They're able to tell themselves that they're not doing chaos in the first place, especially when this thing they're doing is to meet certain needs of theirs. So for example, if someone values money a lot and they're a very greedy individual, they'll rationalize all the corrupt things they're doing in order to get all that money as a way to, of course, use their ego defense mechanisms to not feel bad about, being very greedy and swindling people and stealing and whatnot. So it's that self-deception that's needed in order to be like, this is okay. I can sleep well at night acting like this. Other benefits of this skill is you can avoid traps and pitfalls in life. You can avoid being around certain people that will lead to negative circumstances that aren't in your best interest. If you know that companies do what they can to maximize profit and they look to charge you in any way that they can, you're going to spot that and notice the traps of the given tendencies of this company. And what our company is made out of, they're made out of human beings. So you'll notice that, okay, they may not have my best interest at heart. I'm going to notice and watch out for these fees that they charge, or these arbitrary rules that they make up that are just very arbitrary. And if I look deep into it, it's just a way for them to maximize profit, for example. You may be able to avoid getting into the wrong relationship with the wrong individual that's not right for you, because you can see their negative tendencies, their red flags, the incompatibility, certain shadow traits, certain habits that aren't conducive for a long-term relationship. And that can save you a lot of time and heartache. Another benefit of this is you get an advantage in a given area. So you're better able to read people. You're better able to just avoid unneeded conflict. And that's a serious skill. I mean, there's a lot of people out here that think they have people skills, but they actually don't have people skills as much as they think they do. If you're finding yourself running into the same issues related to people, there's a high chance that you're missing a lot of the puzzle. So having this skill gives you that advantage to not fall into the same traps, and to maybe even skip over traps that you would have fallen into if you didn't know. Predicting what others can do so that you can help them. I mean, if you understand the ways in which people self-sabotage themselves, you could probably give better advice. I think that's what helps me give people such good advice, is that I understand the different levels of self-sabotage that humans experience. Because, I've studied myself, right? And if we're all connected in the way that Carl Jung talks about, and the way that spiritual teachers talk about, then it makes sense that who you are is expressed in other individuals. So that, and on top of course, you knowing the person you're talking to, you give better advice because you can outthink their deception, essentially. You can do it for them, and then they can learn off of that, which is very important. But even if you do that, you have to understand that people have to be self-motivated to want to do that in the first place. You can't force somebody to do so. And then, of course, you can think for yourself too. You're not so unconsciously living. Let's really get into this stuff. So firstly, I want to talk about cognitive biases, and then I'll also talk about cognitive distortions. So cognitive biases, I'm going to list a couple cognitive biases that are very important for this topic that you should know pretty well, and you should spot within yourself and spot within others. Knowing these will help you see the mental shortcuts people tend to go down when it comes to thinking about, things in general, whether you present it to them, whether they think about it themselves, whatever. Anytime someone reacts to information or they live their lives in general, they're going to be using these biases. You're going to be using these biases. So to see it coming, you need to know these biases to begin with. So first, anchoring bias, which is a tendency for us to overly be influenced by the first piece of information that we hear. If the news is on, and then they tell a negative news story first that you hear, and then they share a positive news story, you're going to remember the first news story way more because it came first. But secondly, it had a stronger emotional impact on you than the second news story, the more positive one. We react more strongly to negativity usually. Knowing this, you would be very conscious for when it comes to yourself, you would be very conscious of this anchoring bias going on within yourself. When it comes to other people, when you deal with them, if you're sharing good news and bad news to somebody, like let's turn away from the news channel now, let's talk about you and another person. If you're sharing good news and bad news to somebody, you could start with the good news and then share the bad news afterwards. Although the bad news still has a strong emotional reaction on them, due to anchoring bias, they are going to prioritize the good stuff first. Continuing on, another cognitive bias, the misinformation effect. This is a tendency for memories to be heavily influenced by things that happen after the actual event itself. A person who witnesses a car accident or crime might believe that their recollection is crystal clear, but researchers have found that memory is surprisingly susceptible to even very subtle influences. Absolutely. So oftentimes when law enforcement gets witness testimony, it's very crucial that they get witness testimony as quickly as possible, as soon as possible, because people's memories can be so affected by time, by their projections, by their subconscious fears, by the influence of others, by what they see on TV afterwards. There are a myriad of things that could affect memory. So that is a bias. Our brain isn't as reliable when it comes to memory as we think. We remember things definitely differently. This could tell you a lot about yourself. A lot of people with negative self-images due to negative life experiences, they have frozen their identity in time due to a certain memory. So they have a negative self-image because of a certain memory or a certain series of experiences and memories. But if the mind doesn't memorize things as crystal clear as we think it does, is it true that this person is potentially remembering a false memory, thus they have a false sense of self? Probably. Now, in general, we have false senses of self, right? The ego is false. But if let's say the ego is true, based on our memories in this example, then if our memories aren't even always accurate, there's a high chance that we aren't even remembering the right thing. And we're just filling in gaps, we're making things up. And that's the huge thing about, outthinking yourself, outthinking other people, is that people's memories aren't so reliable. Now, this isn't a hall pass to gaslight people, but it does allow you to stop and pause and to think about some of the things you deem is true about the past, that maybe your mind has just filled in those gaps. It's not actually the case that it's inherently true. This could help a lot with your self-development. So think about that. Next one, the actor-observer bias. This is a tendency to attribute our actions to external influences and other people's actions to internal ones. The way we perceive others and how we attribute their actions hinges on a variety of variables. They can be heavily influenced by whether we are the actor or the observer in the situation. That's right. So when people look at your situation and look at what you have going on, they may attribute your things into internal stuff of you. And then when it comes to them, they may attribute it to the external world. Like, oh, the external world is acting upon me. That person over there, though, their problems, it's coming from internally within them. Isn't that interesting? This also explains why people may not sympathize with you as much. A large part of them are probably thinking, well, this thing that this person is dealing with, it's all coming from them. There aren't really factors outside of them that are affecting them like that. But when it comes to themselves, they're like, oh man, the world's out to get me. The truth is this, our belief is the strongest thing. So whatever we believe to be true, we're going to see evidence of that to be true. At the end of the day, though, you have a lot to say in how your life goes. There's no one that could convince me otherwise because of my direct experience. And me just understanding the facets of reality, I understand that reality does mirror our internal state. Now, are there factors outside your control that affect you? Absolutely. Always remember that. Are there factors outside of someone else's control that affects them? Absolutely. Always remember that. But they always have a say, and you always have a say. And this also calls for you to both keep empathy for others, keep empathy for yourself, but understand that you are empowered to change your circumstances. Next one, confirmation bias. I'm sure a lot of you are already familiar with this one. We tend to only notice evidence that confirms our beliefs. That's what we focus on. Our mind has the reticular activating system, which focuses and hones in on things that are relevant to our reality. And our reality includes what? Our beliefs. So I like leather jackets. You guys see me wear it a lot in my videos. If I go outside, my mind tends to tune in to people wearing leather jackets. And in my world, a bunch of people have leather jackets. It's kind of like Jem's world. Everyone has a similar clothing style. But is that objectively true? No, it's what I'm focused on. So reality is always filtered through our perception. So that can tell you that no one sees reality objectively all the time.
And this also tells you that people live in different realities. So when it comes to outthinking people, you can't assume that people are going to think like you, and you can't assume that people are seeing the same reality that you're seeing, or even focusing on the same things you're focusing on. That's huge. And now you stop making assumptions about what people know or what they're experiencing. There's a confirmation bias going on continually. And that's why people have such strong convictions behind their beliefs. It's because these beliefs have been reinforced due to their selective focus through their RAS. Another one, status quo bias, preferring the familiar even if it harms growth. So why do people stay stuck in life? It's because their environment has a certain status quo that they've normalized. If they go beyond what that environment is showing them, they're going to feel out of place, uncomfortable. And this discomfort raises alarms in the internal, in the mind. The mind is now like, oh, we're going beyond what we're allowed to go. We better toe the line and be careful, because if we stand out too much or we outshine the environment, this may lead to us being rejected. And rejection could lead to what? Survival needs in jeopardy. Love, self-esteem needs, safety needs, physiological needs in jeopardy. And this is the extent that the mind goes to when it comes to rejection. That's why rejection hurts so much. So if you're looking to change as an individual, or you're helping someone to change as an individual, or you're wondering why is somebody just staying the same, the status quo bias is definitely at play. Preferring the familiar, even if it harms their growth, they still prefer what's familiar, what they're used to. Hindsight bias, basically the idea that I knew it all along. Oh, I knew I should have done this. I knew I should have done that. It's a way for you to not feel as bad about not knowing, when really you didn't know, but you're deceiving yourself that you did. There's so many people that make mistakes. You may deal with people like this at work, or it could be in a relationship, it could be a friend, whatever. And they tell you, I knew I should have done this, or I knew we should have done this. You shouldn't be surprised when you hear that, because people like to think that they knew ahead of time. It makes them feel better. Is it true? No. But I mean, are people living in truth, or are people living for meeting their needs and surviving? People are living to meet their needs and surviving. They're not living to necessarily be truthful all the time. If we know that this is true, then we can't be too surprised if somebody says something like this. We can't even get too triggered when somebody says something like this. They go to you, they're like, man, you told me to do this. Man, I knew I should have done this instead. When they never even stated it. High chance that they didn't know. Just be chill about it and just know that it's just hindsight bias. Projection, commonly talk about it. Assuming others think like you do, which leads to false assumptions about people. There are all sorts of projections going on when it comes to people that project onto you. And you have to spot these projections so that you don't absorb the given like energy that people send to you. If somebody just doesn't like you because you're confident, it could be a secret trait that they want to embody within themselves, but they can't. So they take out that frustration on you. But if you don't realize that that's what's going on, you're going to start to feel bad about yourself for feeling confident. Now you associate negative feelings with the idea of feeling confident. Now you can't feel confident, and now confidence is now a shadow trait of yours. Now when you see someone else that's confident, you feel a certain type of way because you made a shadow out of confidence, because you think there's something wrong with it, because someone else gave you data that something is quote unquote wrong with it. But when it comes to shadow work, we are just giving hugs and validation and acceptance to these traits that we're told are quote unquote bad, because all these traits have their given context. And that's what makes us whole. That's what makes us versatile. That's what makes us well-rounded human beings, not these like in a box identities that we think we are. And that's why people can't get out of their stuck situations, is because they're so limited to certain archetypes, certain versions of themselves in the collective unconscious. They can't expand in order to overcome the things they're stuck on. So somebody stuck with dating problems, a guy that can't, get a girlfriend or can't really date girls, he is missing aspects of the lover, aspects of the outlaw archetype, aspects of the magician archetype, of the king archetype. But if he just views himself as a normal guy, let's say the everyman archetype, and he's boxed into the everyman archetype, now he can't show confidence on a date. He can't show his intention of being interested in her. He can't hug her, touch her. He can't, express himself. And that's a problem. It's because he's boxed himself in so much. Continuing on, the false consensus effect, the tendency for people to overestimate how much others agree with their own beliefs, behaviors, attitudes, and values. So are you walking around with this assumption that everyone agrees with you? If you're trying to persuade somebody, if you're trying to get your ideals across, you can't assume that everyone will understand what you're talking about or even agree with everything you're saying. So maybe you make caveats. Maybe you understand what they believe in so that you can make your opinion make more sense to them. For example, let's say I have a friend that likes kale, and I like spinach, and I assume he likes spinach. Well, if I just start talking about how amazing spinach is, and I'm talking in a way that's like, yeah, you agree with me, like, yeah, we all know that spinach is the best ever. He might go on the defense really quickly and be like, well, no, kale's the best, right? And I know this is a very light example. I'm just giving an example. That wouldn't be the best route for him to come around the idea that spinach is really good, or at least the best. What I might say is that, hey, I know you like kale, so I'm relating to his belief, right? I'm basically pacing his reality. This is pacing and leading. In communication, pacing and leading is catching up to the reality of the other person and then getting them to be open-minded about a new idea. So you're like, man, I've tried kale. I know you like kale, and I do like it. It's great. But what I did one day was that I also had spinach after that kale, and man, that spinach and the kale combo was something else. He might be like, oh, really? I never tried that. Now he's at least open-minded to spinach. And now you start talking about spinach a little bit more and how great it is, and then he's more open-minded to it. I know, it's a light example, but it's the idea that you don't just want to assume people's take on things and assume that it's your take. It's the same as your take. You want to understand people, listen to people, so that if you are in a position of persuading somebody, you can pace their reality first and then talk about how the new piece of information that you're bringing in relates to their reality. Does that make sense? Now, I want to move on to cognitive distortions. Number one, all or nothing thinking, also known as black or white thinking. It's polarized thinking. It's just black or white, this or that. There's nothing in the middle, no gray area. Discounting the positive. So positive information comes your way, but you discount it because you are either in a negative state, a negative emotional state, or a negative mind frame. So you're focused on the negative more. This comes about when you give people advice, or maybe you take advice yourself. Your brain doesn't want to take into account the positive things about the situation. And that's why reframing may be difficult for you, is because you have this active emotional rejection towards the reframe. Even though the reframe is truthful, your cognitive distortion is distorting that to take your attention away from the positive and back into the negative. And well, part of this is part of the human condition, because we tend to focus on things that make us feel negative more, because it's our way of working on that or spotting danger, so to speak. So when it comes to this, if you're trying to outthink yourself, you need to be like, okay, I just reframed the situation. Like, let's say you got fired from your job. You just reframe the situation. Okay, the reframe is like, oh, okay, well, gives me time to look for something better for me. Gives me time to explore my habit, my positive habits, creativity. Maybe I can consider entrepreneurship. You reframe it. Well, now though, your emotional, the emotions though, are trying to get you back to being mad. Damn, can't believe he fired me. Forget him, and I didn't like the coworkers. Or you're like, here I go again. I'm always messing up. Whatever. You outthinking yourself would be you going meta and noticing yourself, focusing on the negative. Doesn't mean it's not okay for you to feel bad. Sure, feel bad, that's fine. But understand that there's still a mental filter going on here. And you can shift your focus into feeling the positives of the situation. And when I talk about reframing, I want you to remember that you want to feel the reframe, because reframing can be very logical. But we know when it comes to change, it's not just about logic. We need to get to the emotional level. So we need to emotionally feel the given logic we just gave ourselves. So the example of the guy getting fired from his job, okay, I have more time to myself. I can look for a better job. Well, he needs to feel that. And how can he feel it more? Visualization. Visualizing him in a new work environment that's better, maybe higher paying, that he enjoys more. The emotion from that makes the reframing more powerful than if he just left it on the logical level. Same thing if you're dealing with a friend. How can they feel the emotionality of the positive more, the positive perspective? Jumping into conclusions, kind of self-explanatory. People tend to do that, especially if they have certain wounds around a certain topic. Let's say someone doesn't deal with rejection very well. Any hint of rejection or potential rejection, they jump to the conclusion, right? In order to like kind of protect themselves. And within this is them trying to read people's minds, mind reading, and then trying to tell the future as well. Making decisions from jumping to conclusions isn't the way to go, but people will do this. So you need to notice that. And if you're explaining something to someone and you know they jump to conclusions, outthink that and say things so that they don't jump to conclusions. So let's say you're gonna hang out with your friend and he jumps to conclusions. And you know this and you're like, hey, I can't hang out today. Maybe you suggest a different time. Or you're like, hey man, I'm not, trying to not hang out. I just really have this going on. You go into more detail about it to outthink the mental filter or the mental cognitive distortion of jumping to conclusions. And another one is emotional reasoning. People reason with their emotions and then they rationalize it with logic. This comes down to everything from purchasing habits to what somebody does when they're bored to all sorts of things. I mean, recently I purchased a couple video games from my childhood that I play on my PS4. And the reason why I got those games isn't because they're the greatest games ever made. I got them because, well, it's nostalgic. And nostalgia is an emotion that I like to feel. I love nostalgia. So nostalgia is why I got those games. I could rationalize it with logic and be like, well, I love the battle system in this game and the story. I love the progression of the story. Like I could say that, but even when I say that, it's still rooted in emotion. Me saying I love the progression of the story. I love the progression of the story. I like the battle system. It makes me feel what? Good. That's big. So here's a statement I want to make. Ego defense mechanisms and cognitive biases and distortions give you a peek into someone's beliefs. They may use these various tendencies to get their agendas across. It's important to dissect what's happening in real time to see what's going on. And with ego defense mechanisms, I made a couple of videos on those. You could check those out after this video. But essentially the idea here is that if you're dealing with people, you have to understand that these things, ego defense mechanisms, cognitive biases, distortions, you have to see it in real time for you not to fall into these given things. And that leads me to another thing related to the shadow. People have things in their shadow that they haven't accepted about themselves. And when they see inklings of those traits in somebody else, or they have experiences that trigger those traits, the shadow side of them, they're going to react. And these reactions come in different ways. Let's talk about them. We have outsized reactions to things that others typically don't react very strongly to, that this person might react very strongly to. So for instance, if I tell a guy that his shoelace is untied, he gets mad about that. He gets really mad that I let him know that his shoelace is untied. That is a very outsized reaction. So that tells me that there's something that got triggered. And in this case, this individual may just hate when he gets corrected or told that something is wrong that he's doing. He hates it so much. Let's say he's a know-it-all. Not knowing, ignorance, for example, is in his shadow. He hasn't accepted this side of him that is ignorant. So what he might do is he might project ignorance onto me, shadow projection. So he may project like, oh, this guy just corrected me about my shoelace being untied. He probably doesn't know that I don't care that my shoelace is untied. So he might be like, oh, this guy's just so ignorant. I know, it's funny when you think about it like this, but this is the case. This is what goes on. It's a harmless statement, your shoelace is untied, but to him, it's rooted or tied to a deep insecurity. Thus, he takes that insecurity and he projects it forth onto me, saying something like, this guy's ignorant, trying to correct me about my shoelace being untied. He may be like, actually, it's not untied, I just like it a little bit loose. Continuing on, another example of shadow traits being triggered is anger towards traits that someone displays that they envy or deny within themselves. Let's say you have a person that is very funny or witty, the great conversationalist, they're very funny and witty. Let's say this is like a college environment and they're like in a college class and they're very funny and witty, charismatic, and then they have a classmate that absolutely can't stand that person. The classmate can't even pinpoint the reason why, but they can't stand that person. But then when the person cracks jokes, the classmate realizes that, oh, I just don't like his jokes. I hate it. I hate it. Truly though, the classmate wishes that he was able to crack jokes like that he was funny. And guess what? He can be funny if he allows himself to accept his funny side. Continuing on with shadow traits, fixating on the flaws of others that are similar to the flaws of yourself. So what insecurities do you have? And how do you project those insecurities onto other people? Like, do you fixate on things that people do a lot? You have to ask yourself, if that's the case, are those traits within me? Also, what do you strongly deny? Or what does someone else strongly deny? With a lot of like fervor. Now in the next part of this video, I want to delve into some of Robert Greene's quotes. I'll be quoting some laws from the Laws of Human Nature. Some quotes from Robert Greene that I like. You must learn to distance yourself from the emotions of the moment and see the bigger picture. So when it comes to dealing with people and outthinking people, you can't fall so deeply into the emotions that someone is expressing. Not to say their emotions aren't valid, but you have to look at the bigger picture of things. So if you, for example, confront your friend about something, you're setting a boundary around it, and they get very emotional around it, the boundary you're setting, or they deny, they project, whatever, you can't fall into that frame they're setting around the situation. You have to stop and pause and be like, what's the bigger picture here? The bigger picture is, I want to communicate this boundary to my friend. So I'm going to stick with communicating that boundary if we're going to be friends. And their emotions, while their emotions are valid, it does not take away from what I need to get across. So now you're outthinking the emotional behavior of another person. Another quote, people are rarely who they seem to be, especially in the beginning. We're very complex as individuals. So when you're first meeting somebody, you're meeting a mask, a persona, and it's what people put forth. In Carl Jung's model of the psyche, that's what is the first thing we come in contact with an individual. But behind that is ego, it's the shadow, it's the anima, the animus, and we also have the self. Now here's some laws from the Laws of Human Nature by Robert Greene that are standouts, so I'll be reading these. The law of irrationality. Humans are governed more by emotions than reason. You must become aware of your own emotional triggers and work to manage them consciously. And also when you're dealing with people, you want to be mindful of how their emotions are governing things. It could help you bring people back to groundedness. If they're feeling very riled up, get more grounded. So like if you have a coworker that gets overwhelmed with their work and they think the work is very difficult, oh, these projects are so difficult, oh my God, like they're like that. You can notice that it's their emotional self coming about and help them just ground themselves and take it a step at a time. And then they're like, oh, actually it's not that difficult. I was just getting very emotionally riled up by all this work. The law of narcissism. Everyone has narcissistic tendencies. Understand the narcissism of others to influence them and transform your own empathy to build deeper connections. So instead of being like, oh, everybody's so narcissistic, oh my God, like whatever, you're saying all that about people. Well, where are you narcissistic too? Ask yourself that. Now when you realize the narcissism within you, you start being a little bit more empathetic about the narcissism in other people. The law of role playing, as I talked about with the persona, people reveal themselves over time through patterns. Study these patterns to judge their true nature and reliability. The law of fickleness. Accept the ebbs and flows of public opinion. Crowds are fickle. Don't become addicted to praise or discouraged by criticism. This is for those of you that are content creators, business owners. If you put out art, content, creativity, movies, shows, whatever you put out, understand that public opinion can change and shift and all of that. Don't get so bogged down into that. I have some videos of mine, gets a lot of views and attention. I have other videos, not as much. So what? It's okay. There's seasons of things. The law of rhythm in Hermeticism talks about that. There's ebbs and flows of life. People are not a reliant source of validation. Your validation needs to come from within, because people have their own lives going on and too many things going on to be validating you all the time. So you could think of it as there's a degree of fickleness in people. Not to say that people aren't there for you, they won't support or help. Of course they will. But that can't be your grounded or your most important source of validation. It just won't work. The law of generational myopia. See the historical forces behind the present. Your worldview is shaped by the era you live in. Detach from trends and think in broader historical terms. So they say that history repeats itself. It's because things that happened in the past tend to happen again. And because humans have a certain nature to them, they have certain tendencies to them. So what they did in the past oftentimes is what they'll do in the future. So if you study history, you study ancient teachings, you study ancient phenomena. This doesn't just relate to humans, this can relate to also just natural phenomena, cycles of life. You see that there are patterns and things that repeat themselves. When you remind yourself of that on top of the present things going on in the world, you're not so confused about why things are the way that they are, because there are things that repeat themselves from the past. So wars that happened in the past, wars are going to happen in the future because of similar conflicts around resources, around land, around military might. Certain political movements that happened in the past, a version of them will happen again in the future because of different reasons. That's the thing you want to remember. Continuing on, related to outthinking others, is you want to be mindful of how others can derail you in your progress journey, your growth journey. I'm going to talk about a few habits of people that will lead to derailment. So human nature is a contagious thing. If you're not aware of the behaviors of others, then their behaviors could unconsciously shape your goals, motivations, desires. So first we have envy and insecurity. Friends, or you could say family, people that are familiar with you, they may subtly discourage your growth in ways that you're not noticing. So if to outthink this, you need to be aware of the people that are most likely first to derail or subtly kind of discourage your growth. So you may be like, hey, look, I'm just looking to start a business, or looking to start a clothing line, or, oh, I'm looking to go to this college, I'm looking to travel here. Whatever it is, you want to be mindful of the facial expressions of the opinions, the comments, like, oh, that's nice, but that seems a little bit dangerous, or that seems a little bit unreliable, or that I don't think that's going to work out for you, or I think you should do this instead. Facial expressions, those types of words are all things that could lead to you changing your mind. And you think this is coming from you, but it's not actually coming from you. They've poked at a certain insecurity you had about that thing, and that caused you to derail and then do what they want to do. And the reason why they're saying that is because they could be projecting inefficiencies onto you. They may believe that they couldn't do something like that, so they project that onto you. Or they envy someone that would be able to accomplish that. Thus, they tell you don't do that because, well, they would feel bad about themselves if you did it. And this isn't always, of course, communicated verbally. It can be communicated just through facial expressions. And this touches on the law of envy that Robert Greene talked about. He says, beware of the fragile ego. Envy drives much behavior, yet it's rarely admitted. Learn to spot envy in others and neutralize it before it poisons relationships. And key thing here, he says, yet it's rarely admitted. It's because no one likes to admit that they're feeling envious, right? It feels like a dirty emotion, like, I'm feeling envious of that person. Like nobody wants that. It's a shadow trait that we push away. It's not okay to feel that. So we mask it with something else. So instead of envy, we may think it's you looking out for that person or you being there for that person. But you thinking that is just masking the envy that you're experiencing. Another one, groupthink. Being in a group can lead you to blindly adopt their beliefs. So that's the thing about groups, is you want to make sure you're thinking for yourself and understand, like, okay, what is the general belief system of this group? Where are the shared beliefs and where do I disagree? Watch my video on conformity for more on that. Social validation addiction, kind of going back to what I talked about, people needing validation from others. Craving approval, it weakens your authentic self and it makes you stay on the hamster wheel of chasing validation. Here's a quote. Human behavior in a society is governed by social norms. Social norms are unwritten expectations that members of society have for one another. These norms are ingrained in the particular culture that they emerge from, and humans often follow them unconsciously or without deliberation. Norms are enforced by social pressure, and individuals that violate social norms risk social exclusion. That's right. So your fear of rejection is at play here, and that's why you may be derailed from your goals when somebody tells you, don't do that. It's because you're still seeking their validation, or you fear that if they don't approve of you, that you're going to lose some sort of love or some sort of safety or some sort of survival need that you have. When you go against this, it's known as deviance, you deviating from the crowd. Here's a quote on that. Deviance is behavior that violates social norms. As social norms vary between individuals and cultures, the nature and severity of a deviant act is subjective. What is considered deviant by a society may also change over time as new social norms are developed. Deviance is punished by other individuals through social stigma, censure, or violence. Now, deviance, I'm not talking about doing extremely awful things to people. I'm just saying following your authentic life path, individuating in your own unique way, is deviance, and it's a healthy deviance. Notice what it says here. What is considered deviant by society may also change over time as new social norms are developed. I talked about this in my video on beauty standards. What's beautiful in the 1900s may not be considered beautiful now. What's beautiful now may not be considered beautiful in 10 years from now. It's relative to the era. You going for your authentic life path, it may be deviant right now, but maybe in 20 years, it's the norm. More people are sticking to their authentic life paths in the future. You were just ahead of the fray. Guess what? If everybody that you knew pursued what they wanted, you would be doing it too. Why? Because everybody else is doing it, ironically. But because not that many people are doing that, you feel like you're standing out and you feel very uncomfortable. So it's not even about you going for your life path. It's about the structure. It's about whether or not everybody else is doing it. And that's something you have to break out of. And you have to outthink how others are thinking first. You have to also outthink yourself, especially yourself. Okay, so now in this next part of the video, I want to talk about culture and consumerism and how that relates to us really being very unconscious of the things we do, right? Why we do things. So firstly, like I talked about in my beauty standards video, we have consumerism that makes you seek happiness externally. You have to buy things to be happy. You have to go on certain vacations to be happy. You have to brag about certain things to be happy. And you're told to consume, and to just follow this conventional matrix that goes on. And people fall asleep to the things that they're doing, and they think that these things they're buying and doing are what lead to their long-term fulfillment, when it's really not the case. And then people end up really miserable. And then you're now dealing with people that are miserable. Maybe you're also miserable. It's because you've fallen into the programming. You haven't outthought the programming that has caused you to be a consumer. When you outthink it, you're like, these material things give me a momentary happiness and then it goes away. Why would I keep consuming to chase happiness when I could just be happy by being very present? Or I could just be happy by having gratitude for the small things. Or I could just be happy in my creativity. Or whatever kind of more simpler things make you happy. And notice it's not like this huge dopaminergic spike of happiness. It's more of a subtle serotonin-like form of happiness that we're kind of talking about here. That's so interesting how people forget this because they haven't outthought the programming of consume, consume, consume. Same with beauty standards. People chase the next beauty standard trend, not outthinking the fact that for the skincare industry, I'm just another money mule for them. For the makeup industry, I'm just another money mule for them. Now, that's not the same thing as like, okay, they enjoy, okay, a girl enjoys makeup and she enjoys being dolled up from time to time. That's not the same thing as another girl that like she needs to wear makeup or else she's miserable. Went ahead and turn on my light. Another one, school systems. If you understand that people are really products of the school system, the way they think is boxed into what school has told them to think, and school has convinced them that the world works in this specific way. If you understand this, you understand why people don't think outside the box, why they stay following certain specific life paths. And this is something MJ DeMarco talks about in his book, the idea that people follow these beaten life paths. And one of the reasons why they follow these beaten life paths is because of the school system. The school system has a very rigid way of grading people's intelligence levels. It has a very simplistic way of looking at, success and moving on to the next step in life. And people with all these different talents and ways of learning and abilities don't really get heard out, or they think that there's only a few boxes they can fit into, and thus they end up going for careers that they don't even like they're a creative person, but they're working like a regular office job, or they're a very logical person that probably do great in engineering, but they're like going to be a doctor instead or something like that. So we have like the school system as well that just makes our minds so rigid. It's so interesting because in my college days, I experienced both timelines of taking like a break from school, like certain semesters, like I took a break just to work on like business stuff. And then I had like semesters where, of course, like it's heavy schoolwork, working on things, projects, tests, or exams, all that fun stuff. And I noticed the way I thought was just so different. When I was in like the semesters where there was schooling, it was just, this is just kind of hard to articulate, but I felt like I wasn't really thinking my own thoughts a lot of times. And then the semesters where I was not in school, I felt myself thinking a lot for myself more. It was such an interesting nuance. Now, this isn't a PSA to not go to school or college. Depending on your goals, you want to factor those in. Think for yourself, basically the message of this video. But it's something to think about when a given system can make you shut down your own thinking so consistently, like the critical thinking of a lot of people so consistently. So this section of the video is essentially to help you remember humans are told what to do, what to be. If you're helping somebody or you're in a relationship with somebody, you have to wonder, are you dealing with someone that is just living a fraction of a life? They're just living the life that they're told they should live. They're not living an authentic life. If they're not living an authentic life, then is that contributing to them not being very happy? To them being very stressed, very tired, very annoyed? And if this person's up for your help, you can break this down to them and explain to them like, hey, look, what is your authentic life path? If it's not this job that you're working, then what is it? If it's not this major that you're majoring in, then what is it? And if they don't know, that's okay. They can try to figure that out. And that may take time. And that's what makes this kind of scary for some people. If we're talking about outthinking human nature, is that it leads the door to uncertainty and the unknown. And a lot of people can't operate in the unknown very well. It's very scary. There's fear there. And in fact, school reinforces that fear by saying, oh, you need to figure it out. You need to know this by this time. Not knowing is not good. If you don't know, you get a bad grade. So you see how this goes on. And if you know this and you have this in mind, you can also have some compassion for people in understanding why they maybe try to be perfectionists when they try to figure out what they want in life. Another thing with culture is politics. Here's a quote on politics. Quote, "When humans make decisions as groups, they engage in politics. Humans have evolved to engage in behaviors of self-interest. But this also includes behaviors that facilitate cooperation rather than conflict in collective settings. Individuals will often form in-group and out-group perceptions through which individuals cooperate with the in-group and compete with the out-group." Democrats, conservatives. This causes behaviors such as unconsciously conforming, passively obeying authority, taking pleasure in the misfortune of opponents, initiating hostility towards outgroup members, artificially creating outgroups when non-existent, and punishing those that do not comply with the standards of the in-group. These behaviors lead to the creation of political systems that enforce in-group standards and norms. As you can see in the American political system, the bipartisan, the Democrat-Republican debates and conversations and wars that go on in real life, on the internet, so on and so forth, both sides having certain survival needs that they have, not willing to see the viewpoints and the survival needs of the other group. And this creates a lot of like misunderstandings, so on and so forth. So in the realm of politics, you have to understand that people's political motivations are very much powered by their life experience, their worldview, what they know. And somebody that is maybe that hasn't had to deal with as much setbacks in life and as much pain maybe, and maybe they have more going for them, more things provided for them, they may have this view of the world that everyone should get it on their own. Everyone is capable of doing things themselves, not really noticing the different privileges that they have so that they can even say something like that. You know, them being born into a rich family with, let's say, for example, conservative values, not being able to see that there are people that are born in less, that have certain major disadvantages, both health related, so on and so forth, that would need some help. They are just married to their own well-off worldview, but they don't even view it as well-off, they view it as the norm. And thus they get into arguments, and then there's these political debates where people are arguing two opposing sides and they're having two completely different experiences of reality in life. And that's why if you're looking to outthink people in the political realm, you want to make sure that this person is at least open-minded to different perspectives. If not, you're basically arguing with an ignorant person, or a person that just wants to be right by maybe having straw man arguments, so on and so forth. It could be a big waste of time if you're looking to argue with somebody or debate with somebody like that. I'm not really a big fan of debates, really, anyways, for that reason, because the person has to be open-minded to different perspectives. And I also have to be open-minded to what they're saying too. And the reason why people aren't willing to take the opposing side worldview is because, again, there's an in-group, out-group dynamic. It's tribal in nature. We're the good people, they're the bad people. Because they're the bad people, we cannot agree with anything they say. It's very black and white thinking, which is a cognitive distortion. And it's also an ego defense mechanism. Now, in the realm of economics and money, those that run companies, that do commerce, that sell, they understand and outthink people when it comes to human behavior. They know certain things that consumers don't know, or that consumers forget about themselves. Here's a quote. "Humans engage in predictable behaviors when considering economic decisions, and these behaviors may or may not be rational. Humans make basic decisions through cost-benefit analysis and the acceptable rate of return at the minimum risk. Human economic decision-making is often reference dependent, in which options are weighed in reference to the status quo rather than absolute gains and losses. Humans are also loss averse, fearing loss rather than seeking gain. So that's big. People are loss averse. If you are doing business, if you are selling a product or whatever, you're dealing with someone that doesn't like losing money, okay? So the thing they're getting, it better be more valuable than their money. So you need to talk about the benefits of that given thing, not just the features, not just this has this has that, this has that. You need to talk about, okay, what will they get out of it? How will they feel about it? You need to talk about that too. Talk about the features, yes, but talk about the benefits as well. Again, when I bought my video game from childhood and I played that on my PS4, yes, it was a PS1 video game that was made that you can play on the PS4 now because it's remastered, by the way, if you guys are confused about that. It was emotional before it was logical. So I purchased based on how I was going to feel playing that game, which is nostalgic. That's what that game is truly selling when it remastered it. It's selling nostalgia to me. I'm reminded of 4th grade, of 5th grade. I'm reminded of those memories. And even as I'm talking about it, you see my speech kind of slow down, right? It's that emotion behind it. So that's the thing you want to remember. Humans on the exterior, we have this logical, especially adults, we have this logical mask, this logical persona. But truly, we have an inner child within us that emotionally wants something. Now, next section, why is behavior change in people so difficult? And what can we do about it? So, in the realm of helping others or in the realm of helping yourself improve, you have to basically outthink your old self if we're talking about yourself. And in the realm of other people, they have to essentially outthink their old selves. And the reason why change can be so difficult is the following. Quote, it's important to know that about 95% of our behavior is driven by unconscious processes, aka the subconscious mind. It would simply take too much mental energy to be aware of our behaviors. So instead, most of it becomes automatic, part of our habits. Second, behaviorism has taught us that the environment, through associations and consequences, shapes our behaviors. So let's examine the consequences of a behavior we want to change. Imagine that you want to exercise more often. What are the consequences of the behavior? More energy, better health, slimmer body. Sounds good, right? But to get there, you have to work out, sweat, and skip comfortable hours on the couch and very comfortable food, etc., etc. Do you notice the difference between these consequences? Specifically in their timing, the unpleasant consequences come immediately, while you have to preserve for weeks or even months until you can experience the pleasant consequences of your behavior. Meaning the unpleasant things come faster and the pleasant things come later. And what do we know about people? People love immediate gratification. You love immediate gratification. So to outthink yourself, you have to notice that you like immediate gratification and you have to resist the immediate gratification so you can go to the long-term gratification, which is the more valuable stuff. And this is something I talk about with people in my identity resonance program, sacrifice. The importance of sacrificing things in the now for something higher. The ego likes the now. The ego likes the quick stuff, the quick dopamine. But when you're less ego identified, you're operating from your higher self, you like the long-term stuff. You're able to sit in the stillness of time and let time go by and do the habit anyways, and let time go by and do the habit anyways, and then build it brick by brick, and then you end up building something beautiful. But if you don't have the long-term gratification and you only have the immediate gratification, you're going to either not start or you're going to give up very easily and very quickly. That's our society. Like we have the dopamine for the immediate stuff, and you have to go against that. You have to see what areas of life can I sacrifice this immediate dopamine for the higher stuff, the long-term stuff, the serotonin. And this is going to hurt your ego. Your ego's not going to want to hear this. Your ego might want to be like, man, but it's so necessary. Because 6 months is going to go by and you'll be in the same spot, wondering why you're in the same spot. But 6 months ago, you could have started and then you could have been 6 months ahead. Quote, if consequences drive our behavior, it's not surprising that the immediate visible rewards win over the long-term, abstract ones. If we're not aware of 95% of our behaviors, how can we expect to change them? Exactly. And that's why I talk about awareness. I talk about knowing thyself really well. Because when you know yourself really well, you're able to see the ways in which you are operating off your 95% on autopilot. You're operating off of it and just getting the same results by operating off of it. If you have the awareness, you can stop yourself and then redirect to something else. Now, this is very mechanical in its process. To make this more efficient, you need to essentially change your frequency and change your subconscious beliefs. Subconscious beliefs are about who you are, and your frequency as in a mixture of your thoughts, emotions, focus, attention, so on and so forth. When you change your frequency, you change how you think and you change what you do. And you definitely change how you feel. And of course, how you feel and what you do affects your frequency. Right? So it's like a cycle. You're changing your frequency, changes your behaviors. Your behaviors reinforces that frequency. The frequency reinforces the behaviors, so on and so forth in a loop. Now, some key additional points about human nature so you can outthink it. We operate on our primitive brain a lot still. When it comes to meeting our basic needs, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we operate off our primitive brain. It's so strong. Our need for sex, food, shelter, it's so strong. That's why industries that are around these primitive needs thrive so much, because every human being needs it. So for example, if you have two twins, one has a business selling guitars and the other one has a business selling restaurant food, more people are going to show interest in the dude selling restaurant food than the guitar. Why? Because restaurant food is more relevant to the survival of the average human being. And the guitar, well, it's a small percentage in comparison. So we operate primitively. So people meet their primitive needs. They prioritize that a lot. So that's why, Maslow's model is so genius, is because it shows you that, for people to actually care about self-actualization, they have to be really meeting their basic needs, because the mind operates on survival first. This manifestation, self-betterment stuff, that's a luxury compared to what am I going to have for dinner? Am I going to, am I relatively healthy? Am I going to be in a house, in a safe house or a safe apartment? Right? Same with you. So that even have the mental bandwidth for self-betterment, you have to be relatively safe in your environment. To have the bandwidth to even execute on self-betterment, you have to have the bandwidth for it. And that's also why these systems of society, especially the news, especially predatory advertising, it really targets the primitive brain, the brainstem. That is what our base needs operate from. And then from there we have the limbic brain, which is emotions, and then at the top we have the prefrontal cortex. Shelter, food, sex, these things dominate our decision making and our thinking. So you can expect to notice that in people, and notice that within yourself, because again, you and people are together in this. Another one, humans are habit machines. 95% of your behavior is repetition. So be conscious of your habits, because your habits you'll do unconsciously. So do good habits unconsciously. That's what you want to get to. So when you outthink this, you're installing conscious patterns that interrupt the systems that are just repeating themselves. And these conscious things you're implementing will override the unconscious repetitive patterns. And the healthy new things you put in will be the new repeating patterns. For example, somebody that wants to get fit in the gym, in the beginning, he's not in the same frequency as someone that is a gym goer and that is super fit. But if he is able to consciously go to the gym, no matter how he feels, consistently, let's say 3 to 4 times per week, he goes, and he starts seeing some results too. He doesn't have to, but let's say he starts seeing some results as well. He has interrupted the previous unconscious pattern of not going to gym, maybe eating unhealthy food, with this new one. And now this new behavior, because he's done it repeatedly, is now the automatic behavior, and that becomes the new identity, that becomes associated with the new identity. Yeah, I'm someone that goes to the gym. And now it's hard for him to find excuses to not go, because it's part of who he is, essentially. So remember, we are creatures of habits in that way. This was a video breaking down human behavior and how to outthink human behavior, how to get ahead of it so that you don't get surprised anymore by what people do. Knowing this stuff can help you help people, help you help yourself, and just overall live a better life.